Welcome to this edition of Great Books, a lively discussion of a selection from the canon of exceptional literature. Here's your host, Jack Hatfield.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us for the Great Book Show. I'm Jack Hatfield. Our panel meets monthly to discuss great works of classic and modern literature. Today we're discussing The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope. David will introduce the work. David?
Today's great book is Alexander Pope's heroic-comical poem, The Rape of the Lock, first published in 1712 when Pope was 24. His early writings and satires earned him friendships with Jonathan Swift, John Gay, Joseph Addison, Richard Steele, and other English luminaries of the day. His most famous poem, The Rape of the Lock, is a mock epic. It's a satire of contemporary mores, elevating a trivial incident, a young woman rejects a noble suitor for cutting off a lock of her hair, to epic proportions. That's epic, as in the Odyssey or Paradise Lost. Pope's references are often lost on modern audiences, but it's a fun romp full of quotable lines, wit, and snarky commentary. Jack?
Thanks, David. This is a satire of a certain time and place. Is there more to it than that?
I'd hope so.
Well, what?
Well, the satire is that it's a trivial incident, and it's made into this huge conflagration, including supernatural creatures and armies and trips into the underworld because somebody cut off a lock of a girl's hair. So it talks about people making a big deal out of something that's relatively trivial.
But satires always have a reason for being, and he's attacking some of the social conventions of the time, and he's making a point, and he's just doing it in a funny way. So I think he has a valid thing to attack, because people did make a big deal about the actual event of a girl getting a lock of her hair cut off at a party.
And that I think is part of the answer to your question, because that's a perennial human characteristic, to take things that have some connection with some symbolic or conventional connection with one's worth or status, and to invest it with this great importance that it really doesn't intrinsically have, and that's a universal and timeless characteristic of human beings.
I had a problem distinguishing what was the colloquial convention of the time and what is hyperbole, because we can see it in our modern context, but to call cutting off a lock of hair a rape, okay, that's pretty serious. But was the term used as just a mere violation, or was that title even satirical?
That's interesting. I thought it meant abduction, or taking away from.
Like the rape of Lucretia.
Like the rape of Lucretia, or the rape of the Sabines.
Yeah, it wasn't just sexual
yeah.
in those days.
Right.
What about other themes in there about, for instance, women? I mean,
Women's vanity.
Women's vanity, is that?
Not just women's vanity, but the fact that men were so attracted to women who were beautiful that women needed to spend all this time decorating their faces and her hair in order to get attention. And that still happens today.
Now, the main character is Belinda, and she's the one that had her hair cut. What do you think Pope's stance was against her or for her? I mean, what was his opinion of her?
Get over it.
Get over it?
I think he was saying she was a woman of her time.
Meaning what?
And that at the time there was a great deal of emphasis on how you looked. And if someone attacked how she looked, one, it's a personal violation, somebody coming up and cutting your hair, and two, it makes her less beautiful. Did you want me to shave your head?
Or different between shaving head.
Or take a lock?
Just taking a lock. You take a lock.
But would that make front page headlines, as he seems to think? Or he pretends to think?
I think he pretends to think. It's a satire, so he's
But she
drawing
was
it all out of
flirtatious too. He was
She's
commenting
gussying
on
up
that,
to-
yeah.
Right.
Of course, that was her job.
Right,
That's her job, right.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
she
her
had
job
groomed
description,
herself
yeah.
for.
I thought it was very interesting because she turned from this light-haired or bubble-headed into a real
Raving loony.
Yeah, she really went after everybody after
Yeah.
that. That's
Did anybody get? I mean,
switched.
did anybody get a sense of what actually happened during that melee? I mean, was it a physical melee? I mean, people were lunging at one another.
yeah.
It seemed to. I mean, I couldn't tell whether this was Pope's hyperbole. Whalebone corsets were being broken and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, was that hyperbole or was that? I mean, did he mean us to understand that actually happened?
If you read it, it says she slayed him with a glance, or
Yeah.
she threw snuff at him and he sneezed. And that was the depiction of the actual battle, right? So I think he just meant that there was this male-female thing going on, and people were all upset and yelling at each other.
Well, I think it's his application of the classical battle in heroic literature brought to the silly event where her corset snaps or she throws snuff at him.
Okay. But the pin, she took her bodkin out, and the pin had been passed down through generations, and once it was part of a whistle.
Wasn't it a sword or something? Some kind of
It was a
weapon at
sword,
first?
yeah.
A sword?
And then it became a whistle, and then it became a pin. And this was the most fearsome weapon in this argument. So I don't think anybody got seriously hurt. I didn't even get the feeling that there was pushing and shoving going on. It was just people being very upset at each other.
I think Pope was trying to make the analogy with ancient
Odysseus.
literature.
Heroic.
Telemachus coming in and slaying all the
You
suitors.
You said it was male versus female, but no, Clarissa, who gave this kind of morality speech after Melinda went wild, then Clarissa stepped in and said, "That's kind of stupid." She didn't say it quite that way, but so was it. And then after that, the melee started. I thought.
Yes, after that.
Yeah.
the
So it
melee
wasn't just
started.
male, female. It was.
Well, nobody listened to Clarissa.
I thought they did.
But
I
was
thought they
it, well,
started.
the Baron did because she's the one who gave him the scissors.
Yeah, she gave him the scissors. Yeah,
Yeah.
she
So,
instigated it.
Yeah, she was an instigator.
Yeah, but then later on, she kind of came up and tried
Yeah.
to get everyone back on track.
But the lock is gone. She was the one. If it wasn't for her passing the scissors on, we would not have this tale.
We might. You could have gotten it someplace else. That brings up, why did Pope have her both instigator and ameliorator?
Conciliator.
So yeah, conciliator. So both.
I thought that was strange,
Yeah.
right? Because if she hadn't given the Baron the scissors, the locks never would have gotten cut.
Well,
But he had been making plans to do so.
right.
Yes.
So it wasn't entirely clear how he intended to implement those plans. You know, I wondered whether Clarissa had actually been a co-conspirator, an unindicted co-conspirator in this thing. It wasn't just she just happened to be there and knew what he wanted.
I thought maybe she might have been jealous of how beautiful Belinda was, right?
Could be.
She certainly seems to hold court. I mean, she's certainly a paragon of beauty in this poem. The Center Abbot.
When I read it, it was like Pope was trying to make a statement against women of that time. And then he kind of reread it maybe, and he goes, maybe this is a little too much, and that's why he shoved in the Clarissa
Moralizing speech at the end.
moralizing speech and saying that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I couldn't figure out whether he was. I mean, he certainly thought the excesses. And of course, this was written for a specific occasion, so he had something controlling and constraining the structure of the point of it. But and he certainly was painting these things with a great deal of hyperbole. But I wasn't so sure that he really felt that the conventions themselves were all that stupid. that he wasn't, that it was gentle satire, that it wasn't savage satire, that that's a slash and burn kind of thing.
Right.
That that this was okay, this is kind of how we are. It has some silly aspects, especially when you take it this far, but it's okay. It's basically okay. But I couldn't decide between that and whether he in fact was actually deeper. I was satirizing it at a more deeper and more dark level.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how he fared. Remember, he's
4'11" or something.
Six.
Yeah, or six. 4'6".
He's very small, right?
And a hunchback.
And he pointed out in the poem that the women wanted to go after the
Good-looking guys, yeah.
good-looking guys, but also those who had stature, right? And I was wondering if he was looking at it from an outsider.
Yeah, I kind of got Toulouse-Lautrec feel out of that.
That's why maybe he lampoons the big makeup scene where she's sitting at her
Yes.
toilette. That's a great stanza there. Where he talks about the combs and the ivory and the tortoiseshell.
Right.
And he said it was like an altar.
Yeah.
Right? I think
Was
he
an
used the
altar.
word
Yeah.
priestess there.
Yeah, her maid was a
beauty
priestess.
was the god or goddess that was so important.
And her adversary, the Baron, also had an altar that he sacrificed to the gods.
Right.
He
Yes.
put all his
Yeah.
old love letters and things he had, a glove that he had
Yeah.
kept from his old.
Prostrated and full
Yeah,
of-
yeah, full, yeah,
There you go.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a little much.
Yeah,
I
right.
think, so.
Yeah, get the smoke carrying them to the heavens.
Right.
And, yeah, that's,
Okay, we talked about the women in here, what about the men? How did he portray the men?
Well, let's talk about that scene with the Baron, okay, where he's making an offering to the gods, hoping that he gets a lock of her hair. He was burning all the other mementos he had from all the other women
Yeah,
that
yeah.
presumably he lost his heart to in the past. So he's being pretty inconstant there, that this is the new lady of the week, and he's going to go after her hair now. But there were other women he was chasing before that.
But he had collected all these things.
Yes, he did.
And he was burning them all at once. I mean, this woman was special. I mean,
Okay.
getting the lock of this woman's hair was a big
And he kept
deal.
it and flaunted it with a ring.
Yeah, with the ring, he
Yeah.
was going to put it in a diamond ring.
Yeah.
He said, "I'll wear it," until it disappeared, went flying up to heaven or wherever. It went.
But it also said that he wanted to be famous because of it.
Oh.
Right? And he was so happy that his name would go down in history because he took this lock of hair, very satirically, but he
Well,
was
that's
doing
the
it for
Grail,
two reasons.
I guess. It was just the object of his quest.
Yeah, but when he got the hair, he was also saying it doesn't matter how he got it, whether it was by fraud or force
Yeah.
or trickery.
They said that
so
nobody-
he wasn't going after her. What would he think she would do after he cut the
point.
hair off? I mean,
I think she was a little willing.
yeah, there was that.
So he had
Coquettish.
some idea that she was not going to be totally,
I think he misread her by taking the hair.
Oh, did
and
you?
she said that
Judging
from the
from her
hair from
reaction.
some place that you could see. She would have preferred if it was like it wasn't obvious that he had taken the hair. And
No,
there was
that-
that line in it which made you think that maybe she would have been willing to go along with some of this if it wasn't so obvious that he was taking this beautiful
favorite
lock of her
one.
hair.
Her favorite lock, but also that it was not only her favorite lock, but it was an important part of her accessories. I mean, it framed her neck. The two locks
and
framed her
yeah,
neck in
and
a
with
certain
one
way.
gone,
The
was
other one is just
asymmetrical.
she's
This
asymmetrical.
is-
Right?
Did one of the other women, I don't know if it was Clarissa or not, said, I'm kind of looking at my relationship to you. Now you could be burnt toast, which meant someone wwho had been toast of the town and now has got this
Yeah.
slur against her that
Yes.
would bring her down. And
Yes.
I think that was Thelestres, her friend.
could be.
Her friend, yeah, she said if, it's going to be hard to defend you.
Yeah.
She said essentially.
And, she was saying this is terrible. But what was so terrible about it, she gave a big speech too. And the gist of it was that it was terrible because it would destroy her reputation.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't that it did anything else. It was just, well, people wouldn't think you were pretty. And what does it mean to me being your friend? It's going to be hard to be your friend now.
Nowadays, it would be the woman would say, "This creep," and call the cops. But it was very different reaction from her.
Oh, nowadays it'd be all over YouTube.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the card game.
Oh,
That
That was
got some,
that was
some
so cute.
prominence in there, and I don't know if it's integral or extra.
I think it got prominence because of the epic convention that he was working against, which is all battle sequences.
battle.
I mean, this man translated the Iliad and the Odyssey. He's it's all about battles, and that was the battle. And of course, and he likened it to that as well. I mean, those were the metaphors he used.
It was kind of exciting, actually, when you read it.
Especially if you could follow it, which it took me several readings to be able to follow the
But
thing.
she put forth this card, but I got a better one here.
Yes, his captured queen
Yeah.
was a.
I
It's so
didn't.
obvious because you
Yeah.
win and lose at cards. So it's
Yeah.
very clear that it's a battle.
Yeah, I didn't like. I just thought he was because he went on about the different cards and all this. And I go, oh,
Well, it might have been more meaningful if you knew that game.
well, even so, it's
Yeah.
just. I guess so. It's,
I wonder if that game has survived.
I wondered too, Ombre.
or it turned into something.
Yeah.
Or turned into
Yeah,
something.
probably.
Yeah.
Are there any
maybe.
games that only use 40 cards? I don't know. About
No, I don't think so. What about the other men? I mean, before we leave, the Baron is. What was your take on him? What was? You're kind of talking about it, but is there any other dimensions you could bring out that?
I thought she'd be lucky to get him.
Okay.
I mean, because he was, he had a purpose, and he was going straight. She was flirtatious. All he was doing was trying to be a suitor.
That's what I couldn't figure out. I couldn't figure out what's this guy's motive. Why does he want to do this? I mean, this is not going to endear him to this woman.
Well, I thought maybe he thought it was.
Yeah, it is.
It is, really?
because
This goes to
She's
show.
just tease. She's a tease.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, she
I
spends all her
think-
time
oh,
powdering.
sure.
Yeah.
I think he read her wrong if that's
Yeah.
his
Do
intent.
you?
But the thing about her being open to his advances was also that Ariel, the sprite, the sylph, had to leave her because he looked into her mind and he saw that she wanted a man.
Yeah,
Right? That
Yeah.
she was
Thinking
drawn
about a
towards
lover or
man.
something,
Yeah.
yeah.
And therefore, he couldn't guard her anymore. And he had to leave her. And
Yeah,
The
he
hair
saw
got
it
cut.
was a lost cause. He had other business.
so maybe she did like him a little. Maybe he was
Oh,
the
yeah.
man
Who was
that
the
she
man?
liked.
That's,
Because
I guess,
Yeah,
she
I thought
did
that
play
was-
cards with him, right? She played cards with
Yeah.
him and one other man.
Yeah, two men and her.
Was that Sir
I
Plume?
think he just blew it.
Well, if he had done it right, I mean, if he's,
Yes.
he said, I would like something of yours, a locket of your hair for so I can keep next to my heart, and then all this, she would have gone, oh, yes. But he didn't do that. All right.
Maybe it's just me, but somehow maybe I just don't understand women. I mean, Freud said, I don't understand women, right? And I'm a psychiatrist, so how is that supposed to endear you to a woman? I mean, to cut off a lock of her hair, it feels like an assault. It feels like a rape in the real sense to me. But
I
maybe
thought-
I'm totally
But I really
off of
thought,
it.
though, that if he could not have her, he ultimately wanted her. But if he could not have her, on the way to do that, he would take a lock of hair, because at least he would have that. Then he could pursue it further if she didn't kill him with the bodkin.
The question of his putting it in a ring to be displayed was, again, to me, that was sort of an ambivalent image or a desire on his part. Is it because he so values her that he as you said, as you were saying, I think you're wonderful. I would like a lock of your hair. This is essentially an extension of that. He's going to display it, or is it a trophy?
It's the spoils
I
of
thought it was-
war.
yeah.
It's a spoil of war, so it's a trophy in a sense.
Yeah.
It's not because of any intrinsic value
That's
that
what I
it
got.
connects with her.
I got a different impression. I think Pope was trying to put it in those words, but I think that the Baron intent was to have it as a sign of their connection. So I looked at it more positively,
Okay.
but you can take it either way. Before we leave the men in the story, there's Sir Plume, who was asked to intercede to get the hair back, and he snuffs, he looks at his snuff box after he's asked, and gets that out, and then says, "Go away, you silly woman."
That was the weakest defense that any man could make.
Yeah.
You know, he's supposed to stand up for Belinda, right?
I think he's
And
more
he
of an
didn't.
ineffectual fop by his
That
name,
sounds like
Sir
a-
Plume.
Or he was being realistic and saying, "This is silly, you know, a piece of hair." So I don't know. I think you're right, though. That's Sir Plume. These great names.
Yeah, that is.
But he was supposedly based on a real character too,
Yeah, well,
right? Who was supposed to come to Belinda's aid. I wonder if in the real story he was as useless.
Well, wasn't it interesting? Wasn't he Clarissa's interest? What I thought that, or was it Theaster? It was
Yeah.
Clarissa. So
Or
Clarissa.
Thyristra-
Oh,
yeah.
was it the? I couldn't. Which
other
one was it? Is it the other one?
The other one.
Okay,
Yeah.
her friend. It was her friend.
Yeah.
Her friend's male interest. Okay.
let me change the subject a little bit. There was quite a bit in here about the sprites and the different ogres and all that. And it seemed Pope make a real point of saying that Belinda and other women of that period were just empty-headed, and anything they did was due to the sprites' action on it. What do you think he was trying to say? Was it,
Little fairies running in and out their ear, filling up their mind.
yeah, they
Push
poor
them
little
on.
empty mind?
I think it was just a way of him telling what was going on in her mind. Because like the one that flew off and said, "Hey, this is not going to go anywhere. We know that is fallen for him, and I can't be around here anymore." So it was just thoughts from her mind. How else is he going to put it down? I thought it was just a vehicle.
I thought it also could have been the social conventions of the time, that this is the way women acted because the sprites made them do it, but also because of the peer pressure around and the social conventions that made them act this way.
And you could, if you did something, you could say, "Oh, the fairy made me do it."
I understood that the sprites controlled everything, including men.
Yeah, I didn't think it was
It was
restricted
just
to women.
Yeah, it was-
fate was out of our hands, and it was
Right.
in the hands of the sprites.
And nature. There,
And
there
nature,
was a whole
yeah.
part there
Right.
where the sylphs were in control of nature and the wind
Right,
and the planets.
a bag of wind,
Yeah.
queen of
The fact that you
spleen.
said that, I think you had said that, or somebody had said that he added the sylphs
Yeah.
as the poem evolved.
later.
Yeah, I thought he had again. It was that damning by faint praise in the sense that he had to bring in another convention. That is the gods. I mean, in the Iliad again, he translated the Iliad. In the Iliad, I mean, the gods are all taking sides and they're all intervening
Or
for the
more
different
seasoning for
Yes.
the epic.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but he trivialized them. They're these little, essentially powerless. I mean, they're certainly not gods. They certainly can't bend.
Yeah, but they do all kinds of things that you think it's you who's doing it, but it's controlled by them.
Yeah, that
Let
which
me
which you
kind-
didn't see that in here.
Right.
I mean, right? I mean,
Let me interrupt because
Yeah,
we're kind of running out of time here. Just what do you think of this? I had a kind of a negative opinion. I'll get into it in a minute. But just what do you?
of the poem, of the
Of the
experience
poem,
of
yeah.
the poem.
I thought it was Monty Python.
Oh, wouldn't that have been great?
Yeah, I really thought
Oh,
that it was
my.
The Ministry of
so
Silly Walks was in here
madcap
somewhere,
and
yeah.
absurd. The hyperbole was just oozing out all over, and when you look at the individual actions, they're just blown up out of into such proportion. I think it's great.
What about you? What?
Okay, I really, really liked it. I was reading it and then I thought, this is going to be better if I can do it the way that it is, that if you read it out loud, we had gone through those things before. I loved it. And I did not think I would at all.
I read it aloud too.
Did you really?
Isn't that amazing?
It's fun. It's great.
I
It's a lot
know.
of fun.
I thought it was fun because it was a poem. And
Yeah.
I thought if it was a story, it wouldn't have had the same impact, the same sense of funness.
I didn't like it at all. Partly it was like it kind of, I found it sophomoric. Partly I was very irritated about the format is having couplets where all rhymed to 2 by 2, each one rhymed, and each one had 10 syllables, and I go, oh, geez, why did he ever, maybe that was
If you declaim it for your life, then it just becomes so hilarious, I think.
Well, maybe so.
I read that someone said it was a formal poem about a formal society, and maybe that was part of making fun of this formal society to write this formal poem.
But that's also the convention of the epic poem. I mean,
Yes.
that's how he translated the Iliad
Absolutely.
was in iambic pentameters.
But
So
it
he
worked-
had to do it.
But it worked so well because it was a formal society.
Yes.
Joe, do you want to have the last word? Would you like to do?
My first I found the form a little bit. I read it twice, and I had 2 different impressions. The first time I found the form impeding. Maybe I should have read it out loud, but I found it impeding, but not irritating, but impeding. And I didn't get a lot, even though I had the notes, I didn't get a lot of it, and I didn't enjoy it that much. The second time I read it, I thought it was a hoot. And the form at that point just kind of passed me by. So. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 4 against 1. So that's having
3 and a
different.
half.
3 and a half.
3 and a
okay,
half.
3 and a half. Okay,
More
so
like
that's
3 and a half.
probably.
I enjoyed
Vice
it. I enjoyed it.
We'll get you on another one.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to talk about, at least, and so that I enjoyed. As we take things like the form into our modern age, which we're supposed to do in a great books format, is kind of why. I mean, yeah, it was popular at the time, and then if it impedes now, if it makes it silly, I have a hard time with that part of it. So
It's interesting to see modern poets try to work in these kinds of forms.
yeah, okay. So thank you all. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Join us next time as we discuss another great selection. As Aristotle said, the best way to learn is to get together in small groups and discuss great ideas.